Good evening, or afternoon, or morning, depending on when you're watching this. This is Jeffrey Blake. I'm recording a two-table video of 2-4 at Full Tilt Poker. As you can see, basically even, just getting started. I'm actually probably down about 20 bucks. I made a raise that I had to fold, and then paid the blinds a few times, so I reloaded right before you guys got here, so you didn't get to see any of that, sorry. Today I'm going to be doing the final video in my series of Sauce123 videos, so hopefully this will be a good one. And to start off, I probably made a slight mistake. It's probably better to raise here, especially as aggressive as this player is. I don't really want to play the ace deuce suited out of position, so I'm just going to let it go when he raises. Actually, both of these players have been fairly aggressive, blind versus blind, so I'll need to keep that in mind in the future. I said this is the final video. I am planning on doing a two-part video here, so hopefully this actually won't be the final one. You'll get two. And like I said as well, the strategy I'm basically going to be employing is based on the post from Sauce123, which you can find in the in the shorthanded forum of FlopTurnRiver.com. Essentially, it's about avoiding playing marginal hands out of position for the most part. You don't even play some of your bigger aces. And I may make some adjustments by the end of this video if players are getting a pretty decent or pretty strong read that I'm being tight in early position and they're actually responding to that, and I'm not getting enough hands to raise in late position. I may start adjusting a little bit to take advantage of some of the fold equity that they're giving me. But alternatively, I may just get people to try to run over me and have the best hand most of the time. That's always fun. I don't believe I'll be playing either of these hands. I'm assuming for right now that the little bear is a pretty decent player, though I've got, almost 5,000 hands on him. I don't actually know the guy. That's all from hands that I've just collected. So we'll have to feel him out, but I suspect that he generally has something when he's raising an early position. I definitely want to pay attention to what we see. There should only be maybe one more of those waiting list pop-ups coming. I apologize about those. I was trying to make sure I got full tables before I started this. The river bet there actually seems like a pretty strong hand, because with the 4 to the flush shown and this guy kind of making it seem like he has a draw a lot of the time. This 4-bet was actually a mistake. I didn't realize how short the guy was because I'm going to be probably committed to call if he shoves. And since I'm trying to develop a tighter image for now, that's not exactly the spot I want to be in. Obviously, I'll just check with the Jack-9 out of position. I didn't hit the flop, and I'm not going to get creative just yet. Now, if he checks behind, I may fire at a number of turns. He did. That's not a good card for me against his range, though, so I'm not going to fire. I'll check, and I'll be letting this go. obviously you can't play Jack 8 to a shove. That's interesting. I had a better hand than he limped with. What did he have? He limped with an 8-6 suited. And if you've watched my other videos, you've heard me harp on it, but playing suited connectors out of position is not a good play. At least not until you're to a high enough level that you're playing very strong hands. You're playing your hands very strongly. You want to have very, very good post-flop skills to negate your positional disadvantage in spots like that. Raise with the ace-deuce suited. I think this is only the second time I've raised on this table. And we flop a great flop. I'm going to go ahead and bet over here. And here I'm going to make a standard continuation bet, about $22. And he folds. You could slow play those flops, but I'd like to show down a few good hands if people start playing back at me, so that I can, well, have hands that are good. That didn't make any sense whatsoever. I'm trying to develop a pretty solid, tight image, and to do that, I have to bet, all of my hands. If I want to get folds from weaker hands, then when I have a hand, I need to bet it. You could also make the case that you need to kind of build the pot there, but because he's so short, that maybe isn't quite as true. We'll bet the ace-deuce suited on the button. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little bit of playback from one of these two. This is the second time that the little bear has 3-bet us pre-flop. We're not going to call with ace-deuce suited, but we are going to start thinking about that. And we may 4-bet a little bit lighter, and we may remove some of the worst hands from our range on the button there, just because we want to be able to play back at him when he does that, and he seems like he's going to be doing it consistently. With the odds I'm getting, I'm going to go ahead and call here, looking for just 2 pair or better, just because it's going to happen often enough. I'll be able to build the pot post-flop enough to account for that small call. I didn't hit. I'm just going to fold. I probably wouldn't have called if that hadn't been suited. As strange as that sounds, I hit a lot more flops with the suited king deuce than I do with just 2 random cards, obviously. Little Bear is very aggressive against us, which is fine. It doesn't mean that we need to start doing stupid things like playing back with the 6-5 offsuit. But we do want to increase the value that we give to our actual hands. There, I just limped because I thought it was too likely that I was going to be in a bad spot if I raised, given the frequency that they're three betting. It also will lend a little bit more legitimacy to times that I don't limp. Here with ace king suited in the big blind, I'm just so far ahead of his range. I have to three bet here, and I will, given his stack size, be calling if he shoves. You could you could question the fold with deuces on that previous board, but there are just so many hands. Even if I'm not losing against whatever Stonebone had that he bet out from the small blind there, even if I wasn't behind, well, even if I was had the best hand at that point, he had so many outs against me with the any two card range that he had from the blinds that it was just not worth continuing. Something that a lot of people who have kind of studied this strategy have taken to the extreme is the three betting. You're not trying to three bet with any two cards that you're going to play. You're not saying, oh, any cards that I would play from this spot, I'm going to three bet because someone has already come into the pot. You're only actually three betting with hands that you think are better than the range that they're playing. So it's actually a tighter range of three betting than what you might otherwise expect. Essentially, you're just three betting every time that you think you're ahead. I'm going to pull up that last hand. So, you see a little bit raised, suited one gapper from the big blind. That's worth noting. I'll actually take a note on that in just a moment. Here I'm just going to call again. We flop top pair. I'm not really worried about this board, so I'm going to check, and I'll probably raise if he bets. He bet. So I'm going to go ahead, pump it up to 12. And part of this is just showing that, just because I check doesn't mean you get to bet. It'd be reasonable to open here, but I'm busy. So fold that, we'll fold this. Fold the king 8 in the blinds. With the under the gun, I'll just put early position. Okay, now we're four-handed against two aggressive opponents. This really actually isn't a great spot to be in. Honestly, I'm going to see if I can find another table to jump onto. I mean, I don't know these players well enough to know what to play against them. And four-handed, you need to start playing a lot more hands. They're also all fairly aggressive, so we're not going to be the first in very often. It's the ace-9 suited. If first sucks hadn't been in late position or in early-ish position there, we probably would have continued with it. but he hasn't been raising a whole lot. He's not raising when we are in the blinds on this table all that often, especially when we're in the small blind. This is a good spot. I'll most certainly be 3-betting. But instead we don't get action. That's fine. Unclick auto post blinds, and at the end of this orbit, which I guess is now, swapping in a different table. Sorry for the silence there while I was finding another table to get at, but I think this one will be fairly decent. So what I need to do is get my stats going on this table. And you can see this actually should be a better table for us. We've got one of the looser players to our right now instead of being to our left. The other loose player is to our left, so I guess it evens out. Clearly with queens on the gun we'll be betting. We may or may not even get any action here. We've been pretty slow to get involved. And of course I'm just going to go ahead and go with that ace high flop. And when he calls there, he almost always has to have an ace. So I'll check fold. What I like to do to mix these up in times that they call and then bet any turn is to do some check raising for value. I'm gonna check and actually probably call a bet. He can have the ace, but he can have a number of other hands that we end up beating now. We kind of let him bluff. I don't love the spot, but I will pay him off if he actually has it. And he did. Really, we wish that, obviously, river ace had not hit. Because when it hit, it made it quite a bit less likely that he had the hand. I don't think betting at any point would have really done any good, because he wasn't getting off an ace once the other ace hit. It's interesting to see that he'll call me with ace 9 there post flop. That could actually be very good for us if he has a lower ace hand than we do. And most of the time, if we have an ace, we're going to be dominating that range when we're raising from those positions. Here with bottom pair, I'll just check. He checked behind, and this is the same guy that we were playing at the other table, where we showed that we'll check with a hand. So I'll go ahead and bet out here, and he comes back. I very well may have the best hand, but it's not worth it to keep going. three-handed at this table, so I guess it's not ending up to be much of an improvement over where we were. Go ahead and make a continuation bet. We hit our hand. Now that we actually have players at this table, I won't look to leave. This is a little bit iffy. In fact, with the shorter stacks that we're seeing, I am going to just call here because we're getting, a very, very good price on playing the hand. There's a strong case you can make for betting that pre-flop. However, I'm thinking of this short stack player would be going with it, and I obviously don't want to play him with the deuce 3. If a 5 comes, we'll be very happy. The 4 isn't that bad of a card. Well, it's bad, and then anybody who has anything now has a full house, and we're drawing dead. There's also a number of higher flush draws that you could have. There's no reason to play there. It's hard to say, to give him a hand that could contain a 6 or a 4, but he doesn't really even have to have that to have us in fairly bad shape. And I say that because even though it looked like we had a very powerful draw there, between having a gut shot straight draw and a flush draw, we had a very low flush draw, so there's a decent chance that he could have a higher one, which negates almost all of our outs. And there's another flush draw on the board, meaning that some of the outs to the straight are no longer good. This is a little bit frisky, but I've been pretty tight on this table. With deuce 3 here, we can't even call to make a move. We should be noting that this player is getting fairly aggressive. We want to watch and see to what extent that continues. Jack 9, I do think, is strong enough to raise. I mentioned I was getting a little frisky with some of the plays I made on the table on the left. I was definitely not following the strategy guide from the post we were talking about. So I'll go ahead, given that I did get playback, I'll go ahead and tighten back up a little bit, get a little bit closer to the ranges that we consider optimal for playing that strategy. And hope that they continue to play back at me that way. It'd be a very nice situation if they do. I was just starting to get the impression that they weren't going to. Well, I said get the impression. There's really no reason to get that impression. I was starting to suspect it because of the stats that I'm showing, but there are enough players in this table that just don't have a clue that that really isn't even important. And what's also nice is we have a pretty good table set up with the looser players to our right and the tighter players to our left. We can really do what we want to do in this strategy, and that's raise hands from the button in good position. And then, when we're going to be out of position, we can toss our junk hands and get paid off on our value hands. So it should work out pretty well. We just need to abide by that a little bit better than I did. Of course, ace deuce, 8 deuce out of position, we're folding. And jack 6 suited under the gun is a fold as well. Part of me likes a 3-bet here because I think I am pretty strong against his range, but I'm going to hit quite a few flops and I'm in position, so I'm just going to call. The thing is that he doesn't actually have a king here all that often. So I'm going to put him to the test. If I make it pot, that basically puts him in. He called without a king. That's interesting. Here with 9s, I will go ahead and re-raise. Actually, we haven't seen him make a lot of moves. Yeah, I'll re-raise. I may be throwing away a little bit of money because he's out of position. So it's more likely for him to have a big hand. But it also looks like we're more likely to have a big hand because he's playing from out of position. If JHU Wolf had not raised there, I definitely would have been, both in an effort to isolate, well, basically in an effort to isolate with what I suspected was the best hand at that point. Obviously, against someone who posts pre-flop, we have to think that our King-Jack suited is by far the best hand. When he makes a small bet like that, it can mean anything. It can mean that we still are by far the best hand. But given that we were going to be out of position if we called, I didn't like the spot anymore. We're coming up, we've probably got maybe 2 orbits left before we get to the point that I'm going to stop this video and start the next one. We're down. I guess we're down about half a buy-in, a little bit more than that. But that's not really that bad, given that we haven't hit any hands, and we've had a number of spots where people played back at us with subpar hands that they wouldn't let go of. Those are situations we love, but we also want to actually, make our hand every now and then, and we haven't had much luck doing that today. If we weren't out of position again, I would have raised that. But being out of position, it really just makes the hand suck. Ace 4, anything that calls us, we hit the ace on the flop, and did he limp with an ace 6 suited, with an ace 9 suited? We just don't know. It's really tough to continue, and obviously hitting the 4 does nothing for you either. Here we will definitely be raising with the suited connectors. We end up isolating the loose big blind instead. That was a little bit of a dangerous board, because people do like to bluff at the paired boards a lot more, but he's seen that we're playing a fairly tight range, so I think it's reasonable to suspect that this player in particular is going to give us a little bit more respect. He saw that we could hit a hand and check raise him, so I think it was a reasonable line to take. And we want to be able to see bet there and get action when we have a hand sometimes too. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and finish up this video. I'll start part 2 in just a moment. I'll be folding the 10-8 here, and I'll be back soon.